how do you hold on to hope when the world keeps punching you in the face? Climate's collapsing, politics is on fire, and your brain is just as tired. You're tired of headlines, tired of the chaos, tired of the feeling that it's all spiraling out of control and there's no time left. But yet, here you are, still listening, still reading, still breathing, still here. That tells me you're not done yet. Today we're talking about something I call adaptive hope. Not blind optimism, not doom spiraling, but the messy, flexible, stubborn kind of hope that actually survives in times like these. Most of us bounce between two extremes, or as I like to say, everything in life is swung on a pendulum. You see, oftentimes we don't realize that when we're hurt by something or dissuaded, we'll often swing to the other side of the spectrum. So when it comes to having hope in this modern day, I see us bouncing between two extremes. One we could call blind optimism, which is the don't worry, it'll all work out type of thinking. These people are the ones who can scroll past melting ice caps and go, nature heals. And sure, nature can heal, but not on your Instagram timeline. And then there's the second type of person here, and that's those who doom spiral. That's the it's over, what's the point? That's when we freeze, we stop trying, and we stop caring, and we just kind of let the monotony of life take over. Neither of those extremes work because blind optimism ignores the problem while doom spiraling just gives up the fight. But adaptive hope sits in the middle. It's a kind of hope that adapts to reality, not escapes it. Hence the name adaptive hope. It's not just a random made up word either. This term's been studied by researchers like Bender and Rawlach, who describe it as an, quote, integrated, flexible process that enables people to adapt to change in complex social ecological systems. In other words, it's a type of hope that bends without breaking. So why should we have adaptive hope? Why does it work? Well, here's the thing. Hope isn't what you think it is. It isn't just this nice feeling in your chest that everything's going to work out. And there's data for this. The Human Flourishing Lab found hope correlates with cognitive flexibility, better problem solving, reduced stress, and even improves physical health. So it's a survival skill. There's even research in climate psychology to back this up. You see, people with climate distress, usually the ones who are really feeling the grief, really feeling like the end game is here, those are usually the people who oftentimes take the meaningful action to do something. You see, their resilience in life increases because they have the ability to process those deeply intense emotions. So when somebody says that hope is naive, they're not actually talking about real hope. They're talking about blind hope. Blind hope is naive. Adaptive hope is strategic. It doesn't ignore bad news. It integrates it and keeps moving. So what does adaptive hope look like in action? Picture this. An environmental organizer has a plan for a massive nationwide campaign. Then the funding gets cut. Momentum drops. And suddenly that rigid kind of hope usually just quits. But adaptive hope pivots instead. You see, the organizer then who has an adaptive hope shifts focus to hyper-local action. These are practical moves such as community gardens, school compost programs, neighborhood resilience networks. They're smaller scales, sure, but they still create a real impact. Not only are these actions that don't require millions of dollars of funding, these are all actions that could be achievable, attainable by people like you and me. That's what adaptive hope looks like. It usually carries these three traits. One, flexibility. You change the method, not the mission. Number two, scalability. If big change isn't possible now, then we focus on the micro wins. So many of us online are caught up in the scalability of things. And because we keep thinking big picture of what needs to be done now, because we keep looking to Congress, because we keep looking to our authoritative figures to make really big changes, when those changes don't happen, we find ourselves paralyzed and hopeless. We need to shift from putting our hope into selfish, greedy leaders and into each other who can actually enact small, micro changes that can make a big difference sooner rather than later. The last trait that adaptive hope has is persistence. That is to keep showing up even after the setbacks. Keep asking, keep pushing, keep showing up, keep trying, keep hosting, keep teaching. Because small victories aren't consolation prizes. Small victories are the bricks in the foundation for bigger wins. So, how do we practice adaptive hope today? How do we become a type of people who are not marked by naive hope, but an adaptive hope? Here's how you can start. I'll give you 5 steps to integrate adaptive hope today. Number 1, set adaptive goals. What's your dream? How are you going to change things? Set a goal. If your dream plan gets blocked, then pivot to what's still possible. So let's say you're leading a beach cleanup and a massive storm cancels the whole event. Instead of scrapping it, you can easily organize a smaller last minute cleanup in a nearby park once the weather clears. You see, you're still reducing waste, just in a different location and scale, and you can always go back and do a beach cleanup the other day. Number 2, track micro wins. Log the moments you or other people make small but meaningful changes. Your brain needs those reminders because it's insanely prone to forget things. Let's say your city council finally passes a ban on single-use plastic bags. Is it the sweeping climate bill you wanted? No, but it's a tangible policy shift. You can write it down in a type of hope journal or in the notes app of your phone so you remember progress is actually happening. Number 3, process your feelings. Don't bypass grief or anger because there's signals that you care. So if you're reading another devastating climate report, you can gather with your friends for a climate grief type of night. I know that kind of sounds cheesy, but again, there's psychological benefits to something like this. When you organize, when you gather with a central focus where you're able to share your fears or your anger and exhaustion, there is a psychological benefit in the release of those emotions and the processing of those emotions. Everybody ends up leaving lighter, and 2 people decide to volunteer for a local campaign. What a win. You see, that grief then ends up fueling action instead of paralysis and negativity. Number 4, build support circles. Resilience grows best in groups because, like we just shared in step 3, shared grief is shared action. So if you join a mutual aid group in your neighborhood, when that heat wave hits, you're not just worried, you're checking in on vulnerable neighbors. Then you'll find yourself delivering water. Soon after, you're feeling the difference that community makes, whether you are the recipient of that aid or an agent in the giving of that aid. And lastly, none of this is sustainable unless you rest, because hope burns out if you don't refuel. This is something as simple as intentionally taking a full weekend off, which includes no news, no activism, no social media. Maybe you do something like take a hike or cook an amazingly good meal, go out for a Korean barbecue, read a book for pleasure, finally beat that game, whatever. You can do it alone or with a group of people. But when you come back the next week, you're going to have a clearer, calmer, and ready to keep going mentality. So this week, it'd be really cool if you could try just one of these. And it'd be even cooler if you could share any of those micro wins with me via DM, email, speakpipe.com. I think it's also really encouraging when we show each other and when we share with each other that these things actually work, that there is hope out there, that we can maintain a type of hope that ends up in real change. We can show each other that holding on to hope in the present when it seems like the future is falling apart doesn't mean clinging to a perfect picture. So let your hope change shape. If the world is a storm, then adaptive hope is the reed in those tumultuous winds, not the dying tree that snaps. You don't need a master plan to save everything. You just need the fire to keep showing up. So as we round out the second half of 2025, let hope be the muscle you train, bend, adjust, and then show up again.